Okay, so I thought it would be a great time to share with you one of my favorite topics, The Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross. So, St. John of the Cross lived right around the same time as the early parts of the Reformation era, right? But he was raised as a Carmelite priest, and as he was coming up through the ranks, he said, "Hey, I think we can do this whole thing called church better." And for that, his Bible professors threw him in what was essentially a latrine or former latrine. He was put into solitary confinement for 9 months where there was no light and he was only given human interaction when he was being given food or beaten. And during that time, he composed love poetry in order to stay sane. And so he would repeat this love poetry to himself. And he was speaking in Spanish because he lived in Spain. And we don't know what happened, but eventually he escaped and made his way out and wrote down the poem. And people loved it so much that they actually asked him to write a commentary on his own poem. And that is where we get the phrase, the dark night of the soul. His exposition of the poem is actually quite, it's romantic and it's deep, but it actually touches on a very intense part of the spiritual formation and Christian development. So I'm going to share with you something that I made. It's just a chart. And I love talking about this topic because I think that there's a lot of people that are going through the dark night of the soul, but they have no one to speak about it. And we do have some people that take use of this phrase, the dark night of the soul, in more of a therapeutic sense, okay? Where they talk about a difficult season of life. Well, this is actually a little bit more than that. This is different than that. The theo-poetic approach, rather than the therapeutic approach to the dark night of the soul, I just think it's utterly profound. So I'm going to share with you this chart. All you have to do is sit back and follow through because I think this is just groundbreaking awesome. Ready? Here we go. So the dark night of the soul can essentially be broken up into 4 or 5 parts. And the first 2 parts are the dark night of the senses. The latter 2 parts are called the dark night of the soul, and it's active, passive, meaning there's a part of it that we do, and then there's a part of it that happens to us, active and passive, all right? So, boom. All right, so we're going to talk through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all right? And the 5th stage is something that's a little bit more theoretical. It's more my own addition or interpretation of this. So let's talk through it. We're going to talk through each of the 4 stages, what's given up or taken away, what form of idolatry is smashed, good advice for this stage and bad advice for this stage. Because Thomas Merton says we should be very careful who we talk to about the dark night of the soul. Because if we go to someone for advice about the dark night of the soul, but they haven't actually been through it themselves, they'll likely give you very, very bad advice. And we don't want that. And so that's what this video is about. Stage 1. The active night of the senses is when we actively and voluntarily give up sensory pleasures and vices in pursuit of faith. So, stage 1. Someone comes to faith and they decide to give up their addictions to heroin or to cake, to cigarettes or to sex. They just give it up because they want to condense their life. They want to make it pure, whatever you mean by that, right? And so what's going on here, though, is you're trying to clean up your life. And in a sense, every faith tradition, every denomination affirms this part. Cool, that's great. You start going to church, you start going to Bible studies, you listen to sermons religiously, you listen to a lot of worship music, and it's all good. I'm not saying that any of that's bad. But at stage 2, and we'll get to the other parts, at stage 2, the passive night is something that happens to us. And this is when we passively lose the sensory experiences of the sweetness of faith, meaning we lose enjoying worship. We lose enjoying Bible study, community gatherings, sermons. There's a season of life where we are so wrapped up in these things because we're cleaning up our lives and everything's working. And maybe we're in this stage for a long time, but a point comes, and maybe you've experienced this, when prayer, going to church, sermons, Bible studies, all of these things are like ash on the tongue. They mean nothing anymore. They give you no longer any high. You don't feel any sense of consolation from these things. And so we've got to stop and recognize, like, wait a second, I was all about these things. Now, let's go back, right? What form of idolatry is being smashed? The dark night of the soul is interesting because it's really about a romance between God and the beloved, where God is systematically taking away every single idol that's getting in between of the romance between the beloved and God. And so in stage one, what's being taken away? Putting faith in ourselves. And so we put faith in God. And so trusting in ourselves is, boom, taken away. But in stage two, what's taken away is putting faith in the experiences of faith. Does it make sense? And so it's a matter of, oh, good, life is going well, faith is going well because I feel good when I go to church. Gone. See what I mean? This is powerful. Now, it's good advice at stage one to tell someone, go ahead, keep going, keep giving up your vices. This is all good. This is good. Bad advice for this is give up your vices because that's the only thing that matters. But good advice for stage two could be keep going. Do not worry about losing the sweetness of experiences. That's a part of the path. You're not losing faith, you're growing in it. That would be really good advice to give someone for whom worship music, sermons, Bible studies just don't give them a kick anymore, that they don't find any benefit to those things. That would be good advice. This is a part of the journey. You're being weaned off of this. St. John of the Cross actually says this is like weaning a child off of milk. Leave that behind. It's good and it's sweet, but it serves you for a purpose, for a season. But it's not meant to be something that you sustain yourself on for the whole time. Bad advice, though, to someone at stage two could be, you're losing faith. You don't enjoy Bible studies, you don't enjoy worship, you don't enjoy going to church anymore, you don't enjoy these things, you're losing the faith. You need to go to more services, Bible studies, or perhaps you should even lead these things rather than attend. And so if someone has never gone through a dark night of the soul themselves, they will look at somebody at stage two and be like, you're losing it, man. I'm really worried about you. This isn't good. You really should be all about giving up vices and being devoted to Bible studies and services and sermons and going to the church building as often as possible every week, you know? And so I actually think that this is a good point to say something interesting. I think that much of the conventional understandings of church affirm stage one. Cool, great. Somebody gives up cigarettes and they stop cheating, or they stop being a thief and they come to church. Cool. Conventional church loves that. But conventional church doesn't exactly know what to do with someone that doesn't like its products. Conventional church doesn't know what to do with someone that no longer finds consolation in hymns or music or Bible studies. They're like, well, what do we do with you? You don't want all the services that we have to give. And so we've got something really interesting that happens at this point as we go into stage three. Let's do that. Stage three is when we actively and voluntarily let go of confining thoughts, ideas, or conceptualizations of God. Perhaps we had a pastor that told us what God is like, and now we're starting to question that. So before, in stage two, we're kind of questioning worship music and sermons. Now we're starting to question even our own theology. And so what's happening here? What idolatry is being smashed or taken away? It's putting faith in one's certitude or theological accuracy / purity. Meaning, you're no longer as certain as you used to be because maybe you've experienced a larger world. Perhaps you've traveled to another country. Perhaps you've started reading something from another faith tradition. You're like, well, that kind of makes sense too. And so all of a sudden, your idea of God, your framework for understanding this thing that we call God, all of a sudden is no longer as stable. And that feels terrifying. That feels wrong, but you can't help it. And so, good advice when someone is questioning their own theology is to say, keep going. You are shifting to integrate cataphatic and apophatic faith. Cataphatic faith is the parts of faith that we can be certain about, but it has to be balanced with mystery. An apophatic approach to faith is one that embraces unknowing, one that embraces mystery. And the first two stages of faith here, they're not comfortable with mystery. They're not comfortable with the apophatic approach. And so right now, in this cultural milieu, we've got a lot of people that are, quote, deconstructing their faith. And when I hear that phrase, all I think of is, oh, they're in stage 3 of the dark night of the soul. They are taking apart their framework and conceptualization of God, and they're asking, is this true? Which is a great question to ask, but it's a question that terrifies and threatens conventional understandings of how to do church and how to do God. What would be bad advice here? It would be telling someone, you're a heretic. Stop questioning the tradition. Stop questioning the pastor. Do not question authority. That would be terrible advice. What's really going on is someone is growing in their faith, not losing it. But to some people, again, that haven't gone through the dark night of the soul, that might feel utterly terrifying to watch someone else take apart their faith, to no longer find interest in church services or worship music or sermons, to see someone take apart their understanding of God that they were handed and start to ask questions that maybe that person doesn't give themselves permission to ask. Now let's get to stage 4, because this is where things, I think, get very, very interesting. The passive night of the soul, though, is when we passively, this happens to us, we lose the experience of faith itself. Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? This is when a person, for all intents and purposes, they feel like they're an atheist. Because in stage 1, they lose putting faith in themselves. Stage 2, they lose the sweetness of faith, the consolation experiences. Stage 3, they lose any pride about theological certainty. And stage 4 is like even faith itself gets taken away. And so this is what's happening. The form of idolatry being smashed is putting faith in how much faith one thinks they have. And so what God is doing is saying, oh, I see the way that you put your faith in how virtuous you are. Yoink. I see the way that you're putting faith in how strong your emotions are during a church service. Yoink. Oh, I see how you've put so much faith in your theological system. Yoink. And over here, I see how much faith you put in faith itself. Yoink. And so, putting faith in faith is still idolatry because it's still not putting faith in God. And again, this is a whole romance season of life where God is taking away every single crutch and support that we ever build up and saying, I want nothing between you and myself. remember, this is about God and the beloved. And so good advice here would be keep going. Christ experienced this level of, quote, atheism on the cross as well. This is not new territory, even for God. I think it's G.K. Chesterton. He even says in his book, Orthodoxy, that on the cross is the moment when even Christ seems to be an atheist. That should cause like the Apple rainbow wheel. Like, it's like, I can't compute that. That's crazy. Bad advice would be to go to someone who's gone through all these stages and say, you're an atheist. You've lost it. You're no longer one of us. Get out of here. But again, all the bad advice that's happening here could be coming from someone who's actually never gone through a dark night of the soul themselves, But to someone who has been going through it, they might say, oh, I see what's happening. All these crutches are being taken away, and so now you're left at this beautiful last stage, which for our purposes here, I'm going to call stage 5. We're going to call it just dawn, because it's passing through the night into the dawn. The dawn is when we have utter faith in God alone, without any idols to prop up one's faith. When all the crutches are taken away, all of our virtuous pride, all of our consolations are taken away, when all of our theological certainty is taken away, when we feel as though God has abandoned us, there's nothing left to do. There's nothing left to depend upon except just to fall into the hands of God, right? And so at this point, idols are exposed and have utterly lost their seduction. And so it's actually good. Keep giving up vices if they're there, but you don't put faith in how many vices you give up. Continue going to church services, continue listening to sermons or listening to good Bible studies that challenge you where you need to be challenged, but you no longer put any faith in, oh, that was a good one, so I feel good about my faith. It's okay. It was a bad Bible study. Yeah. You no longer put certainty in your theological system. Your theological system is allowed to adapt and to change and to blossom and evolve. And that's okay. It no longer threatens you, because all of a sudden you're like, I just have to go where Spirit leads me. And if that means that one system or framework has become too small for my blossoming, it's okay. It's time to outgrow it. But also it means that we don't put any faith in how much faith we think we have. Now, bad advice to someone who's at the dawn stage is to say that they're not a Christian. You have no idea. This is someone that's gone through all of these stages. This is someone that has wrestled and stuck with the faith in a capacity that you cannot comprehend, And so what I think this whole poem is really about, it's about the formation of a mystic. We are very uncomfortable with the phrase mystic in conventional Western Christianity because it sounds too Eastern or even Middle Eastern. But the faith was first brought together by these desert mystics, these monastics who lived just outside of the cities and thought, we need to do this faith well. And so all of this is built upon having a deep and profound romantic experience of God that has nothing between God and the beloved. So you can see this isn't exactly like a therapeutic understanding of the dark night of the soul. Although modern psychology has taken use of the phrase and say this is a very difficult time, what the people have done is kind of extrapolate the phrase away from its original meaning, which has to do with your darkest season of life, where faith crumbles, might actually be the most romantic coming together of God and yourself that has ever happened. Now, once you've gone through a dark night of the soul once, you're no longer threatened as much when you have to go through it a second time, and maybe it does happen. But it also means that you start to see other people differently. When you talk to someone, you can kind of hear in their words, you haven't suffered yet. You don't know what love of God really is yet. You love certitude, or you love worship music, and you love giving up vices. And that's all good. I'm not saying any of that's bad, but that's not the same thing as a sweet, romantic, mystical embrace between the beloved and God. Which is why I utterly think that The Dark Night of the Soul is one of the most profound pieces of literature and poetry and commentary on poetry that the church has ever produced. And if I were to take a guess, I think that in the American church right now, we have a lot of people in stages 2, 3, and 4, and we have so few people to coach through those stages. So few. Because it's hard to get to dawn. It's hard to get to this place where you embrace mystery and complete and utter trust, and you put zero emphasis or there's no seduction to idols to you at all anymore. You know, it's like you're living on another plane of the Christian experience, and you look down at other people, not condescendingly, but you just say, hey, keep going. It gets better if you dive further into all of this. So the Western church loves people at stage 1 and maybe starts to lose them at stage 2. You can make a lot of money with buildings and worship music and people that are in stage 1. But these megachurches and some of these profound experiences on Sunday mornings, they start to lose their grip as soon as someone shifts into stage 2. So in my estimation, what we need to do is we need to think about church communities or faith communities more as like universities that bring people through their freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year, and help them to continue on through these stages. And we desperately need people who know this framework really well so that they don't give bad advice to people. And so I hope that my interpretation of this 4 or 5 stages of Dark Night of the Soul, I hope it's helpful. For me personally, this has helped me understand my own journey, but it's also really helped me to sit down and talk with someone, and I think to myself, oh, you're in stage 2. Oh, you're in stage 4. You just have a little further to go, and then you're going to see how beautiful it is to live on the other side of certainty, where all of a sudden you completely embrace free-falling trust. So, thank you for watching. I hope this was a good video for you. All right? And yeah, I don't know what else to say. Just excited about it. So, cheers. Have a great day.